Today's lesson is on doubt. And the one thing that I wanted to try to ask you today is there's no one here, I'm not going to ask who's ever had doubts. That would be ridiculous. But the meaning of doubt is to have two opinions. You've got 1 foot in the boat and 1 foot on the dock. You can't quite be sure which way you want to go. We meet people and we automatically form opinions and we have doubts. Now, I heard a sermon once, the pastor said, "Why do people worry about what my wife wears? Would you wonder or worry about what a plumber wears, or an electrician, or a computer programmer, or a teacher?" But we all form opinions immediately, especially about pastors. And if their wife is wearing something that we don't think is appropriate, we start doubting immediately. We don't even really know her yet, but just because what she's wearing, we can have doubts. I thought that was really true. Never really thought about it like that, but it's true. Have you ever doubted your ability? Yeah. I mean, you can be a rocket scientist or you can be a mom. And some moms I know have told me that they doubt sometimes if they're doing the right thing for their children. And dads, we doubt sometimes if we're keeping it between the ditches for our kids. And that has been a theme for me for the last 40 years. We doubt sometimes exactly what we're doing. Then I wanted to ask you this question, and think about this. What are some of the circumstances that happen in your life that tend to really bring doubt? What are things that can happen to people that cause them to be more doubtful? Sickness can cause it. Anything else?
Anytime you start something brand new to you.
I'm sorry?
Anytime you start something that's brand new to you,
Yeah.
you're down.
Yeah.
Any kind
Yeah,
of
go ahead.
loss.
So,
I don't know if I should say this, but I was a pastor for years, and we had people that are ultra conservative.
you're kidding, but go ahead.
And we're talking about clothes. Almost everything they condemned. And I was a little bit more liberal.
Yeah.
I don't like using that word, but I was a bit different. And I really, am I right? Are they right?
Yeah.
And I prayed about it because I thought they were wrong, because I thought we were saved by grace and faith, not works. But it really bothered me for years. I don't want to lead people astray. And so that was a big doubt in my mind, and that's what I really prayed about.
And that's, I think every Adventist has had that go through their mind.
Dad.
Yeah. Wow. Now there's a big one. There's a big one that can cause them.
What was it? I didn't hear him.
Yeah.
Dad.
Yeah, I was thinking about any kind of setback or loss, whether it's in business or personal or death, can really, like Job, can really make you doubt, right?
Yeah.
He was doubting, he was wishing he hadn't even been born.
There's another comment here.
Drama.
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 And drama, call it drama. Trauma is yeah, all those things, finances, man, that's some trauma. Finances. You can really doubt, am I doing the right thing? Maybe I should just chuck this and get a job, you know? Go ahead.
I was thinking about the fact that when something really dramatic happens in your life, sudden death, lose your job, whatever it is, I think your immediate reaction is self-centered. I don't even think you're thinking about God most of the time when that happens. You need to go through the initial phase, get your feet on the ground.
Yes, sure.
No, I was waiting.
I know we've all had personal problems. Some of them are with children or grandchildren, and you begin to doubt, what did I do wrong? You know, what happened? With all these things come through our mind as we take our journey. Do you believe? Yeah.
Unanswered prayers or prayers that are answered in a way I didn't think they should be answered.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing what my doctor told me not to. I didn't hear a word you said. I'm going, yeah, tell me.
Unanswered prayers,
Yes.
or God has maybe answered a prayer in a way that I didn't think
Yeah,
would be answered,
right.
but I.
John.
Anytime you make a decision, if there were good choices either way, or maybe bad choices either way, you always want to second guess yourself and say,
Yeah.
you know, did I go the right path or not?
Well, then, since we're having this little conversation, has anyone ever doubted what their church teaches?
Yes.
Have you doubted what the Seventh-day Adventist Church really stands for at times? Have you doubted it at times? I have. But I'm still here. I have doubted it. Do you doubt sometimes the state of the dead that the Adventists hold to? Wouldn't it be nice just to die and go to heaven and not stay in a casket for a couple, 300 or 400 or 1,000 years and go straight to heaven like everybody else in the world believes? No, what?
What I was going to say is we take the things that we have said about doubt and we add them together because we live in a world where Satan has a lot of control. And these things just cascade on us. That creates the doubt that I think is hard to manage.
I promise you that Satan moves in when you're your weakest. I mean, I have a conference every morning in his office and say, Roy is going to be low today. I know it. Go after him. Now I'm going to break Ken's laptop today. I'm going to kick his butt all the way out of that class. Okay? It's going to happen.
Ken, the devil hates this class. Take that as a compliment.
I think I'm one of his favorite people right now. We doubt. We go to funerals. We hope. And then when we get through all our doubting, we need to really regroup, like Roy said, and just write down all the facts. What are the facts? What has happened? Why did it happen? Why do I believe this? How do I go back? How do I prove this? And then we need to sit down and think about all the things that God has done for us. My life, in spite of my griping and moaning and everything, is really a miracle. It really is. It really is, as I look back on.
We'd love to hear about it sometime.
I have doubted my church's teachings my entire life. But yet when I sit down, I generally come back to feel, what other church could I go to and I would feel any better? Probably none, because I've gone to those churches and I liked it. But at the end of the day, I always end up here. But if you're not doubting, you're not thinking. It really comes down to that. And you have to prove it for yourself. And if you're one of these guys that every day of your life is just wonderful, then there I have some serious doubts.
If you don't have doubts, especially when you first come to a church, you're just being broken.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not you and God relationship, it's just, let me remember all the rules and all the doctrines, and we better make sure every I is dotted and T crossed, and
Yeah. And without the Seventh-day Adventist Church, in spite of all the doubts that I have, in spite of all the shortcomings that I've seen, and it's like Leon Mastek has told me, it's not the church count, it's the people. And all the bad experiences that I've seen, and all the ups and downs, I believe that I'm in the right place. Let's move to the story. I want to give you a little background first. Jesus had just been through the transfiguration on Mount Hebron. And 2 or 3 weeks ago, I taught this class and we talked about the gates of hell. Jesus said the gates of hell will not prevail against, And I always thought basically, well, that's true, at the end of time, this. He was talking about a cave where pagan sacrifices were being made every day. He's up in Caesarea Philippi. That's Gentile country, very few Jews up there. And he's on a little sabbatical. He's away with his guys, and they're just kind of spending some time. And he's telling them about all these pagans that are sacrificing at that very spot called the gates of hell. They will not prevail against him. Then he's transfigured. He has 3 disciples with him. And as he comes down the mountain, he sees a big crowd, and there's a big hubbub going on. And he sees his, 9 other disciples arguing with the Pharisees. They have been unable to help a little boy whose dad has brought him to see Jesus. And they're in a big fight with the Pharisees. This is the first time we read about the Pharisees being in this spot. Jesus had purposely tried to get away from that. He'd had enough drama. When I said trauma, he'd had enough drama for a while, and he's going to take a break. But they have come from Jerusalem. I don't know how far that is, Roy. It must be at least 100 miles. And I don't know how many days walk that is. That's 5 or 6 days if you're really hoofing it, to get up there to check them. Maybe they came from Capernaum, I don't know, but it sounds like the Jerusalem crowd. They've walked 100 miles just to stay in his face. And that's a lot of drama. So with that said, let's turn to the harmony number 88, I believe. Let's see. Yes, number 88 in the harmony. And if you want to read it out of your Bibles, it's marked 9:14 through 29. So I'll read this one. Let's see how long. When they came to the other disciples, they saw a large crowd around them and the teachers of the law arguing with them. As soon as all the people saw Jesus, they were overwhelmed with wonder and ran to greet him. What are you arguing with him about? He asked. The man in the crowd answered, Teacher, I brought my son who is possessed by a spirit that has robbed him of his speech. When it seizes him, it throws him to the ground, he foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive out the spirit, but they could not. O believing generation, Jesus replied, how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy to me. So they brought him. When the spirit saw Jesus, it immediately threw the boy into a convulsion. He fell to the ground and rolled around, foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the boy's father, how long has he been like this? From childhood, he answered. It has often thrown him to the fire or water to kill him, but if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us. If I can, said Jesus, everything is possible for him who believes. Immediately the boy's father exclaimed, I do believe. I do believe. But help me with my unbelief. When Jesus saw that a crowd was running to the scene, he rebuked the evil spirit. You deaf and mute spirit, he said, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again. The spirit shrieked, convulsed him violently, and came out. The boy looked so much like a corpse that many said, he's dead. But Jesus took him by the hand, lifted him to his feet, and he stood up. After Jesus had gone indoors, his disciple asked him privately, why couldn't we drive it out? He replied. He said, this kind can come out only by prayer, and some manuscripts say only by prayer and fasting. So let me give you just my imagination here, and you can doubt if you think this is correct. There was a man who had a little boy who was very sick. I don't know the age of the boy. And his neighbors or a friend or someone had told him about this Jewish fellow that was in the area. And he had been healing people. And just maybe you could take your son to him and he might be able to heal it. We're hearing about it. It's been doing things. The father wanted to believe, but he didn't believe. He wanted to, but he couldn't just pull the trigger yet. So he takes him and he's asked if he has faith. And when we saw the rest of the story and how it plays out. Now, just keep in mind that I'm a little ahead of myself here. I don't have my notes, but it was a point that I wanted to make to you about doubters. We're told, I believe it's in Matthew, at the very last chapter of Matthew. Juan, you're an expert on Matthew. What is it? Matthew 28, is that the last chapter? If you read that, Juan, you have your Bible. Would you go to Matthew 28 and read the last part of that chapter? And it talks about these 11 disciples going to see Jesus. And what does it say about what some of them believed and some of them still doubted? You see that at the end there?
Verse 17,
I think it was Matthew.
17, verse 17.
Yeah, can you read that?
When they saw him, they worshiped him, but some doubted.
Jesus has been crucified. He has risen from the dead. And it says plainly there that they worshiped him. And while they're worshiping, some are still doubting. They have seen Lazarus raised from the dead. They see Jesus who was crucified, and yet they are still doubting. Don't feel so bad about yourself and your doubts. These men had seen Lazarus raised from the dead. Let me also go back to another story. The road to Emmaus, which I love. Cleopas, remember Cleopas and his buddy are walking down the street. They're brokenhearted. Jesus wasn't the guy they thought he was. They really thought he was going to, come in, take Israel back to where they should have been in their mind, back to the days of King David. And it was a big, big disappointment. So Jesus is walking behind them. They don't recognize him. What are you talking about? Where have you been? Have you not been around? I mean, the whole community's in an uproar. This Jesus fellow we thought was the Savior, he's not. And we're doubting. And remember, he walked with them and he began to talk to them and tell them about the scriptures. And they remember that wonderful phrase where they asked him to stay, and when he left, he appeared to them at the table where they were eating there. And he said, didn't our hearts burn within us when he opened the scriptures up to our minds? When he opened our minds to the scriptures. Our hearts burn within us. Yes.
Do you remember the story about Jesus walking on water?
Yeah.
And he said, I just found it really incredibly hard to believe the doubt. You're a walking miracle yourself.
Yeah.
And you have a little wind in your face and you get scared and you doubt. And so what did Jesus say? He said, why did you doubt?
Yeah.
These people lived with him every day. They saw all of his miracles. I don't understand it. I mean, what would it take so that you had no doubt?
That is the whole point, one of the main points of this lesson. Miracles are not going to get you across the finish line. On the road to Emmaus, Jesus is showing what you should be doing to get through day to day. You're not going to see a miracle day to day. I'm probably never going to see a miracle in my lifetime of what we've read about. Healing the sick, curing leprosy, making dead people rise. I probably won't see that. Like to. Probably won't happen. What he's driving home is you're going to have to study the scriptures. You know how many times Jesus was quoted the Old Testament? 78 times that we know of. Was probably 1,078 times. And guess what book he quoted the most? Deuteronomy. I thought it was Isaiah. The greatest commandment is found in Deuteronomy. Love the Lord with all your heart. So he's driving home the point that if you think you're a bad dad, if you're a bad mom, you're a bad doctor, you're a bad ditch digger, why don't you just read what I've left you with? I've had these things written and left them with. So, doubt is quite normal. I'm supposed to know a great deal about certain things. And last week, I was blindsided by a mistake that I had made. And I didn't tell my wife what it was, but she can tell when I've done something, when I'm beat up by something. And guess what helped me? The lesson that I got destroyed when I ran over it this morning, that helped me. I read all those stories about people who had doubted. And I began to get encouraged. I began to really think, well, and it kind of worked out yesterday. I had a little breakthrough. It's not solved. It's a massive problem. And I'm doubting my ability. I've been doing this all these years. And how in the world could this is a massive blow to me. How could this happen? Am I losing my mind? Am I too old to do this anymore? I trusted the wrong people. I trusted people to take care of me, people I pay a lot of money. They wanted to, but they failed me. Well, guess who takes the hit? The guy at the top. The buck stops right here. When I began to read these stories, I read about Sarah and the 3 visitors to Abraham. And Jesus was telling Abraham, you are going to be the father of this nation. I haven't forgotten what I told you. You're going to be the father of children. You're going to have a child. So really, I'm 100 years old. With my wife, it's, oh, remember Sarah? laughed about it. And what does Isaac mean? Laughter. What Isaac means to laugh. She doubted it. She doubted it. And then the beautiful story of Zacharias, the father of John the Baptist. That story really encouraged me. Remember, he was on duty. He was a priest. He was on duty. And he was supposed to have this honor of burning incense. They burned incense 3 times a year. And a priest could be on duty his whole career and never get into the place where Zacharias had entered. You may go your whole life as a priest and not perform this duty. And Gabriel shows up there and tells him that you're old, but you're going to have a son. And he says, well, how can I believe this? And the angel says, I'm Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God. And because you've doubted me, you're not going to be able to talk until this baby's born. And when he's born, you'll be able to speak again. You doubted me. I found that very encouraging. Joseph is engaged to Mary. She's pregnant. So he decides to quietly divorce her to save her any embarrassment. He is doubting the whole engagement. And an angel appears and says, don't be afraid of this. It's going to be okay. You need to take Mary as your wife. Stop doubting. So he does. These things are the things that Jesus is driving home. You won't see a miracle. It's here that you'll have to come to grips with your doubt. Okay, we got 30 minutes to kill. Let's hear it. I got nothing left.
I wonder about the things that we see every day that really are miracles.
Yeah.
And because they're so common and so ordinary, we don't think about it. Science has given us so many, quote, miracles that, and just the life itself is a miracle. So I think studying the Word of God helps us to see the miracles that are all around us and helps build our.
Yeah. I get discouraged about February, then I think March and April will be here soon. I can make it.
We have to remember that God owns everything. So when you say science has given us miracles,
Yeah, sure.
who really gave that?
Amen.
Science, God enabled those technologies and those people to learn those activities in order to provide what we consider a miracle.
Yeah. John, go ahead.
Okay, I'm getting back to this. I do believe that Jesus died in roads. Lazarus died in roads. Elijah brought back the Shunammite widow's son from death. All those kind of things. I believe it. But the problem is, I work in the hospital, the neurosurgical unit, do anesthesia. I've watched way too many people die. Even though I believe that it happened, they did raise them from the dead. Most of the time, it doesn't work that way. And so, whenever it comes to this father, I'm just like he is. God, I do believe. Help that part of me that doesn't.
Yeah. Go ahead.
The miracle that we have, all of us in this room, to have lived in this country instead of Venezuela or Ukraine
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
or Russia.
Yeah. That's a lot. You know, I find that so hard in this age that people are living under that kind of oppression. We just have so much to be thankful for.
You know, we're often hard on the people from the Old Testament. Hey, God brought you through the Red Sea. Hey, God gave you the land of Canaan.
Yeah.
All this, and we're hard on them because they forgot and they didn't. But they still had to rely on the promises of a Messiah.
Yeah.
We saw that fulfilled. We have that evidence. So that puts us in a much better position because we have seen God's promises fulfilled in a bigger way than anybody in the Old Testament did, regardless of what miracles they saw.
Yeah. Let me rephrase our question to you. when you have been really down, really out, really doubting, have you ever run into someone or suddenly talked to someone that you felt like you had a whole new breath of fresh air after talking to them? Remember that? What was the characteristic of that person that was beginning to bring so much hope back to you? What characteristic did they have? What was their background? What had they been doing to help you get back on your feet?
And I think that they had had experiences of doubt. They worked through them with God's help, and now they can help somebody else.
Yeah.
And I think that everybody in this room is doubting. And I think that we can make it a blessing.
We can. This whole lesson, to me, and all the great stories, this is right at the top 5 lessons for me. This man who doubted. My whole life has been sort of a crapshoot, if you want to say it. And I had to be hopeful, I had to be optimistic, I had to be on my game, I had to be somebody.
I'm just.
Oh, okay, yeah.
What I really like about being here this morning, this is the first time I have sat listening to you, because I'm fairly new in this class.
Yeah.
And you are so real and transparent and authentic that knowing how you handle things or the challenges that you face inspires me to be able to look at things in a similar light to surmount stuff like your laptop this morning, you know, for somebody who's got their brain, some of their brains in there, you know, it's a little bit of a challenge. So I think that in the same way the disciples could have, when they were around Christ and they saw how he handled things and his reactions and his responses to the things that threw them for a loop, those were wonderful teachable moments. And still they doubted.
Yeah, well, thank you
It's
for the
amazing.
Yeah, thank you. You really ought to be admiring my wife for putting up with me all those years.
You did.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah. Everybody kick in and we're down to 25 minutes.
After my son passed away, I was sitting there talking to Pastor Jerry, and we had a conversation about doubt. And he made a comment to me that it's almost equal. The more doubt you have, the bigger a bigger obstacle to overcome. And I noticed after losing Alec that it was pretty quick. The only place that I could go was God. But now, and then the second point is that, like in the question of meeting somebody, I tend to be a more positive person. I'm married because he calls himself a realist. He's not in here, so I can say this. But it just, for 29 years, I've puzzled over, well, Randy, it's really simple. You just believe this and this is what God says. And now I'm realizing that the reason we're together is he really needed somebody that was this, and I needed someone to anchor me into what reality really was.
Sort of
Balancing out, and that's what faith and doubt is a real balance.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yes, Ruth.
When I see Wendy and hear her talk and hear her faith.
Sorry again, Ruth, I'm sorry I'm going down on you, but that's the way it is. Sorry. Go ahead.
When I see Wendy and hear her faith.
Yeah.
After the unbelievable trauma that she has gone through, you know, it makes me think, where is my faith? I have not lost a child, but we have been close, very close to losing a child. And I think number one, we have to confront our doubts, not pretend that they're not there, but to recognize that, yes, we're human and we do have doubts.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, once we recognize that doubts, we need to realize, and it's hard, but realize that there is someone greater than our doubts.
Yeah.
And someone who can help us through our doubts and give us the faith. Just like the Father said here, Lord, I believe. Yes, we have a measure of faith.
Yeah.
But our measure of faith may not be enough. So we have to pray to God in desperation.
Yeah.
Help my unbelief.
Yes, Ruth.
I'm Ruthie.
Ruth. Ruthie, and there's another Ruth right there. Yeah, Ruth. Would all the Ruths stand up?
Why didn't you two stand up? I couldn't help think when you were retelling the stories, how wonderful it was and what a loving Heavenly Father we have, because he knew they were doubting. And yet he walked behind them and instructed them, and that's what he does with us.
Yeah.
So patient, so long suffering. And he doesn't look at our faults, he looks at what we can become.
Yeah. You know, I guess the two main things this morning are get off your back about your doubt. Yeah. Hey, Robin, let me get back here so I can.
I have an awful lot to say about this topic, but I'll keep it very brief. Speak up. I said I have a lot to talk about this topic, but I'll keep it brief. No worry. For starters, I don't believe for 1 second that Jesus doesn't understand doubt. He could not understand how we are human if he didn't understand doubt. So when I fall in a hole, I have to turn around and talk to him and say, I know you get it.
Yeah.
Because if he didn't get it, there's no point. And so I can't criticize anybody in the Bible for screwing up and not having faith. Because I'm just like them. No matter what I've been through in my life and all the amazing things that I've seen, I still wonder.
Who did Jesus say was the greatest man born of woman? John the Baptist. And at the end, remember what happened, John? Where was John emotionally toward the end? He was doubting. He sent his disciples to Jesus, and they're saying, I have a question from John. Are you really the one? Are you really the Messiah? When he baptized him, and God came down in the form of a dove to speak. John the Baptist is doubting. Yes.
I think this, I was hearing you say, Ken, about, beating yourself up.
Yeah.
How long have I been doing this? And I did a kindergarten mistake. Well, I heard a man just this week say something interesting when I was talking about something I'd done, or was it what you did? I can't. They're teasing what I had done, and his answer was so refreshing because instead of saying, "Well, yeah, that was pretty stupid," he said, "Welcome to the human race."
Yeah.
He reminded me, that we're in a sinful world. I'm a sinful person. I'm going to make mistakes, but instead of doubt, there's hope.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so be okay.
So when my husband was real sick, everybody in the church was quick to send me promises from the Bible. And then after he passed away, those promises, I began to doubt them because they didn't live up to what I was holding on to. They were saying, here's this promise, hold on to this promise, and he will be healed. But then when he wasn't, and he passed away, I was very mad at God and doubted those promises. And it's taken me a while to not be mad at him and not doubt those same promises because they're hard. They're like the unanswered prayers that she's talking about. They're hard to still hold on to sometimes.
Yeah. When I've really been down on my back, go ahead, yeah.
Well, you finished what you were going to say.
Well, I was just saying, in the past, I've had problems and you just need to pray more about it. You just need to claim the promises. I said, it's not working. It's not working. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say basically just about the same thing. We're all collections of expectations. Each one of us has expectations about life, the people that we know, everything that goes on, what's going on in Ukraine, for example. And so when those expectations aren't met, then one of the options we have is to doubt. And I'm doubting where I was going with this. He's got it. He's back. But the typical reaction of humans is to provide answers. Oh, this person is doubting. Well, you should think this way. You should claim this promise. You should pray more. You know, you get all these typical reactions. And I think a wise person, well, I'm not knocking that approach. It's okay. But to let somebody doubt, keep doubting and slowly let them find out by asking them questions, what their expectations were and what their premises were, just to have them come up with this type of expectation. And so it's a wonderful way of getting into people's hearts and lives.
Yeah. Gordon. Oh, no, Gordon, your wife.
She goes.
Ladies first.
I think all of us doubt multiple times in our life, but a lot of us were raised, not only was doubt wrong, it was sinful. So now you're dealing with guilt on top of your doubt. So if we can just get back to the fact that doubt is normal, that God can put us past that and get past the guilt of being doubtful, I think we can survive it a lot better.
I think so too, yeah.
One of the things I think sometimes about the Christian church is that, and our church is part of this, we preach promises in a way that we expect them, that God will do them, the miracle that's in that. And I think it causes a lot of confusion in people. I like the prayer that Pastor Jerry has at the end of each service where it says, according to your will. And that's what it's all about.
Yes.
I think it's pretty special that Jesus chose men that had all these different problems. And, you know, we have doubting Thomas that talks about, you have Peter that's impetuous about things. You have, you know, James and John that want to be most important in the world. And so, you know, you have all these, and he's so patient with all that. And you see that as he works with us, works with them to see, you know, that that's part of our human nature, and doubting is one of them. Yeah. And, you know, he told Thomas, I was just reading that John Perry told Thomas, he says, well, you know, it's really nice now you believe you've been able to touch my places in my hand. But he says, what about all those that are coming along that aren't going to be able to do that? Yeah.
I need to read those promises. I just can't take them to the bank. I'm just gonna sit on my rear end and everything's just gonna come out hunky-dory. I gotta work a little bit. But I need those promises, but I can't. There's gotta be a bigger part of the equation filled. Hang on 1 minute. Yeah, 1 second. We got here and here and here. Go ahead.
I think faith is a gift. Faith, there's nothing I can do to earn enough faith that I need. I mean, when in your life have you been really down and out, bankrupt, deaf, you have no church? I was talking to an extremely close friend of mine the other day who's the CEO of a very large nonprofit. She was the lead pastor of a Methodist church in Birmingham. Things happened to me, John, and I got to a point that I didn't believe in God anymore. Call me an atheist. Oh, by the way, I got to show up Sunday morning and preach. She said, and I got to, and don't ask me how I dug myself out of it, because I didn't dig myself out of faith was a gift. So think, what got you to sit in this row? What was it? It was, in my view, it was a gift. With all my doubts, with all the crummy stuff that I found myself in parts of my life, somewhere I was lifted up. I can't take faith and put it in the bank and save it for when I need it.
Yeah.
It's part of life that goes on, but I believe it to be a gift. Loved ones that are in trouble, they're going to get a gift of faith. I have to pray and believe that.
Go ahead.
I think faith can be looked at in the long term and then also in the short term. I knew a pastor who loved to go in to visit the sick, obviously, and especially the terminally ill. He would say to them, I believe God is going to heal you. And after the shock wore off, he would say to them, God has two opportunities to heal you. He can heal you immediately, and these are where the promises in the Bible we all cling to, or he can heal you at the resurrection.
Yeah.
And where is our faith? Is our faith just strong enough for the immediate responses to God, or are we willing to place our faith in the long term?
Someone else, yeah, wow, we got hand. I'm free here, and then I want to tell you a story. It'll really put it slipped out. Go ahead.
Well, I've been reading a lot about the Ukraine and that they're at war, and it's a terrible thing, but I believe that we're at war. And you said that when your computer, laptop is run over, it just knocks you down.
Yeah.
But I think, it's not me, man, but I think it was a real blessing, because this is the best lesson I've been to since I've been coming here.
This concept is about how wonder Okay. This is a story about one of the times I went through a divorce.
Speak up, John.
Can't hear you.
All right.
This is one of the stories about one of his divorces.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, we got it.
All right. So anyway, I couldn't understand what was going on. And I began to pray about it. There were some nights that I prayed all night long. I would not sleep. I'd just get up and go to work and drink a cup of coffee. And I began claiming all of these promises that God gave us. And they just weren't working out. I began to doubt. And actually the church became involved with my divorce. And I thought, I'm a one-man band. I'm fighting her and everybody else in the church as well. And I kept on claiming those promises. And I began to doubt God. And I said, why is this going on? You know, put your money where your mouth is. I claimed these promises, didn't I? After a while, I began to practice a little bit of acceptance. And by the way, I have a temper. And I think God withheld the information about what was transpiring from me because of my temper. A few years later, I did find out several things that were transpiring during that time. And then one of the ladies I do ballroom dancing with brought me a country western song. I think it's by Randy Travis, because now I knew what had transpired. And this Randy Travis song was entitled, I Thank the Lord for Unanswered Prayers.
Thank you.
Yes.
Amen.
So I don't know if you guys picked up on.
You haven't talked this much ever. Jim Mary's out of town. You're
I don't know what, this is a topic that's really, I am really close to. But John said a word. It was the key, in my opinion, and the word was acceptance. The problem with most people, in my opinion, including myself, because I deal with this all the time, is entitlement. We feel entitled for the outcome. If it doesn't work out the way we want, see, that wasn't Job's experience. He didn't, to his death, he would, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. See, he had no expectation. You know, I accept God and I'm not going to doubt him.
What was the last thing that Jesus said on the cross? My God, why have you forsaken? Yes. Be back, Gordon, in a second.
I'd like to tell you,
Yeah, now I'm happy to say you're gonna have to make it brief. We're out of time. I didn't think it was. So make it brief. Yeah.
I'd like to tell you a modern day miracle
Okay.
in myself. 5 months ago, I got up Saturday night, 10 o'clock. My foot was red, discolored. I called my son-in-law, Rod.
Yeah.
He said, Dad, you've got gangrene.
Got what?
Gangrene.
Wow. Yeah, okay.
I was taken to the hospital that night, stayed there for a week with antibiotics, come back to Dr. Haig. When I first went in to see him, he said, Jerry, I just want you to know that I'm going to have to take part of your foot off. And I questioned him. I had doubt.
Yeah.
I didn't want it to happen. But I went back to see him every 3-4 days. And he said, well, maybe I won't have to take only to the top, to the first bone in your foot, and take it off there. And I know there was a lot of prayers, but long story short, that foot healed up.
Wow.
And I had 10 people that came to my room at Garden Plaza to change the bandage. And all 10 of them said they never saw a foot like mine, but what it had the portion of it cut off. But somehow the Lord took mercy on me and saved my foot.
Wow. Wow. Thanks for sharing that, Gordon. Yeah, this, and then we'll wrap it up.
You brought up the subject of Christ doubt. I was thinking about that because, you know, he experienced everything we experienced. We don't often think about the doubt he had on the cross.
Or Gethsemane.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that he was facing the abyss.
Yeah.
And he wasn't sure he was going to come out of it. That's the only way he could pay the price.
He was human. He was human. And he
His last
understood
words were, into your hands, I commend my spirit.
That's
Those
right.
were the last words.
One word was, why have you forsaken me? But even if you forsake me, I commend my spirit into your hands.
I want to tell you a couple of things about doubt. Moving away from biblical times, moving into modern areas the last couple of hundred years, the last 100 years or so. There were great men that doubted, and because of their doubt, not only were they good men, they became great men. William Wilberforce in 1833 doubted that slavery was legal, even though he could prove in the Bible that you could own a slave. In 1833, he pushed the anti-slavery through Great Britain's parliament, and slavery ended in Great Britain, and Great Britain did rule the world in that time. Great Britain actually ruled the world until 1900. That was a magnificent piece of legislation, but he doubted that slavery was right when all the religious people came to him proving it in the Bible. He doubted it, and he was right. James Madison, he was our 4th president. In 1812, it was still believed that if you had a seizure, you were demon possessed in this nation. Okay, I'm not talking about 1612, I'm talking about 1812. But his wife, Dolly Madison, knew when the seizures came, it was when he was under stress. And she doubted that he was under some evil satanic influence, and so did he. And he went on to serve as president. And when she saw the stress coming, she got him out of the room. He laid down, he recovered, and he carried on. There were people doubting Winston Churchill. Half of Britain wanted to surrender to the Nazis, but his famous saying was, "You cannot negotiate with a tiger when your head is in his mouth." And people doubted that was right for a while. I can tell you one thing that I go back to in my life when I'm really doubting. I wonder, how does God really deal with us? I mean, we are such. And one thing I also want to say, the reason I'm standing here today is because a man 30 years ago sat me down and said, forget whatever you've learned at the church at this point, because you are a bitter, he's really thinking you're a bitter, screwed up guy. But he didn't say that. He took me in with great love and patience. And he said, I want you to meet me in, or where it was. Where did all the rich people used to go in California? Bob Hope lived there. Palm Springs. Meet me in Palm Springs. It was a convention. And so I go to Palm Springs, but he says, well, let's have a Bible study. I said, I'm not having a Bible study with you or anybody else. The whole phrase turned me off. Bible study. He said, well, just bring your Bible and can we just read? I said, okay, I'll read with you, but I'm not going to have a Bible study. He opened my mind up to the scriptures that evening, and my life began to change. He went right into Daniel and Revelation. He didn't miss anything. We went right to the problem. And I said, well, what does that mean? He said, well, the church says this. I said, but what do you think it means? I don't know. He was honest. What does this mean? It means this and this and this. Well, do you believe that's true? He said, no. This was a great Adventist. Most of it he was in line with, but he doubted some of those things. When I think of God and putting up with us, and this is the illustration now, 10 years ago, my twin boys, grandsons were 2, and naturally, like all crazy grandfathers, go out and buy a toy they're not ready to play with. They're not large enough. So I buy 2 little John Deere electric tractors. I hate putting the stuff like that together. I did it as a parent. I don't want to do it as a grandparent. We did, my daughter and me. We're up all night putting these, and even the decals I had. Okay. So Christmas Day comes. I got the little tractors out there. Sit them on it, show them to push the accelerator. They want to, they get off. They want to push it. They want to go sideways with it. They want to get in front of it. They don't have enough faith in it. They have a lot of doubt that they can drive this thing. And I'm standing there saying, it's okay. Let me put you up here one more time. And they fall off one more time. And I think of God sometimes as the wonderful grandparent. He says, it's all right. I know you're doubting this. I know it's hard for you to really believe that someday you can get on this machine and go down the road and be happy. But it will happen if you will just stop doubting and trust me. So eventually they get on the tractor. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
Listen, sorry about the laptop. But I really appreciated you being here. I appreciated your discussion, your comments. They were all so meaningful because for once, you know, honest to God, we can be honest with God. It's just so nice to experience that. Mike, would you have a prayer?
Dear Lord, we thank you so much for an absolutely beautiful day that we were able to come together and learn more about you and also learn more about our own characters. I realize that every one of us doubt, even you doubted. But you turned your life back over to God, and we ask that we'll do the same as we leave today, go our separate ways, that we'll turn our lives back over to you to overcome our doubt. being an angel.
Dewan will be teaching next week, so make sure we're here. I think you got the message. Good. We'll see you all next week. Thanks.